when you come into your camp, you want to make sure that you have a nice area to bed down. Picking your camp, maybe you already have one that's established like this one, or maybe you're going to be making a camp out on the forest floor. And again, remembering to keep mindful of the things that we need to be mindful of, such as deadfalls around us. We should be on a little bit higher ground. We don't want, to be in a hollow where water will settle or the cold air will settle. So those are some of the things that you want to pay attention to. But the blanket is a very versatile piece of kit, and that's what we're going to talk about. So the simple blanket, which can be used in our bedrolls, we can use it as a coat, we can use it as a blind if we actually needed to, and of course we have it for our sleeping wear and a shelter. Let's take a look at some of the reasons why the blanket is so versatile and how it actually affects us and what we need to do to use it to remain warm. One of the things that actually helps the blanket keep you warm is the fact that it is hollow animal hair. Okay? It's not a very good conductor of heat, which makes it a very good insulator. Unfortunately, one of the things that we have to combat, one of the 5 mechanisms of heat loss, is conduction. And the ground, unfortunately, is a very good conductor. How do we solve our conduction factor? Well, one of the best ways that we can do that is to make sure that we have enough insulation between ourselves and the ground. And as you remember from the last time, we put a raised bed in the shelter here. I took 2 logs, I put them side by side, and I filled up the inside with debris and leaves, starting with squaw wood and then going to the larger leaf pile. And then what I continued to do is I continued to make sure that I had enough leaves when compressed to have at least 6 inches while it's compressed. So when you start off, you're going to need to have at least 12 to 18, possibly more, depending on how much you weigh and how much the material is going to compress. While you're out and you're foraging, you're doing your scout and whatnot, it's always good to take advantage of if you find something that's consumable or edible. And what I have here is some partridge berry. If you look right here, you'll see the partridge berry. And they come out in June. And they'll last pretty much all through the winter. The deer like them. They don't really have a lot of taste to them. It's a low creeping vine. Okay. Here's what it looks like, and here's the berries. Alright, nothing major. They almost look like wintergreen. So, something to take into consideration. Nice little trail nibble. One of the other things that makes a blanket very good is the fact that it's hydroscopic. And what that means is that it will repel and it will suspend water until the fabric itself becomes saturated, at least up to 50% of its weight. In the end, what does that mean for you? Well, basically what it means is that even though it's wet, it's still going to retain its insulative properties. As you can see, it's repelling it, and it rolls right off. Again, keeping with the mentality of, we're looking for things and we're foraging and looking for things that are going to be beneficial to us. Again, I came across this nice little yellow birch. All right, and all this is all going to be tinder. So I can collect a bunch of this, add it to what I have, in my market wallet, and I'll be able to start a fire tonight. One of the smaller bedrolls that I like to carry if I'm just out on a scout, for the day, and I don't plan on staying overnight, is nothing more than a blanket with a traditional tump line. This one was made by Steve Davis, a friend of mine, Stillwater Woodcraft, and a market wallet, right? It allows me the freedom to move around and move lightly and fast without having to worry about carrying a big bedroll. So let's unroll this. Let's take a look at what I got for today, just for a short little scout. Taking a look at what we have here, again, just a basic scout kit that I'm going out for a day, just a day jaunt, looking for a scout, looking for deer sign, things of that nature. I'm not going to spend too much time out in the woods. I have my shelter, which is going to be my blanket right here. If I need to add an extra layer, I have an extra shirt. I have wool wraps for my legs to help keep them a little bit warmer. I have a Jackware mug that I'll use for drinking cold water. You don't want to put anything hot in those because they are lined with wax. Okay, you don't want the wax to melt, and then your cup is going to leak. I have my boiler, and in my boiler I have salt horn, and I have my chocolate, my muscovado sugar. There's even some tea in there as well. I would just make my boiled chocolate or whatever my hot fluid is in this, and I would just drink it right from there. Spoon, obviously, for mixing and tasting. I have a flint and steel kit, some beeswax candles. I have a Hudson Bay tin with a magnifying glass in it and charred material. I have some horsehoof fungus that I found, so I'll keep that for tinder. I have cordage in the shape of rawhide lacing and leather thongs. I have another backup fire kit which I keep inside the blanket. I have a tomahawk, my tump line, and of course my market wallet. Some of the things that we may want to look for when we're choosing a blanket to use in our bedroll is we're going to look for the bulk or the mass of the blanket itself. Then we're going to look for the weave, and that's going to be the density of the blanket. And then the last thing is we're going to be looking for the material that the blanket is made of, or per se the fluff. There's 100% wool blankets, there's 95, all the way down to 50-50 blends. So we've discussed the properties of a blanket and what actually makes them useful and a viable piece of kit. Now let's talk about how we're going to sleep in our blanket. And this is one example here. What I've done is I've taken the blanket and I've just folded it in half. And then at the bottom, by my feet, I took up about a foot of material and I folded it back over. I secured it with a blanket pin to create a toe box for where my feet are. Now I came up halfway from the end of the toe box and I put another blanket pin. So what this does is it basically made a poor man's sleeping bag. Okay, I can climb in here, and then if I chose to, if I had a fire, I would be able to actually tend my fire through the night to make sure that it keeps me warm. I chose a spot with a log that's behind me for the prevailing winds, albeit this is not level and I would look for a more level area. Okay, but bearing in mind that I would still put about 12 to 18 inches of leaves on the ground as an insulation that once it's compressed, I'll have about 6 inches between myself and the ground, keeping me warmer. Again, there's a little bit of a gap in the log and the ground. I can cover that in with some debris, some sticks and things of that nature, and I should be good as long as the weather holds for the evening. So that's one method of actually using a blanket in conjunction with sleeping. you know, you come off the trail or something of that nature, and you're done for the day, and your chores are done. So you want to sit down, you want to relax, and sometimes you have hot chocolate, sometimes you'll have tea, sometimes you'll have coffee. Well, boiled chocolate back then was actually something that they were very fond of. And actually today I figure we'll make a little boiled chocolate because the fire is actually dying down nicely. We have some good coals. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that. Before we do that though, you have to realize it's not a powdered drink mix that you have out there today. So what I have that I keep in my corn boiler is nothing more than the unsweetened chocolate and some muscovado sugar. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to prepare this and we'll cook it up. You have to play with your ratios and you have to figure out, you know, what actually tastes good for you. So we're going to do that right now. Ooh, you cannot have the chocolate, says the master to the dog. No chocolate. All right, what this is this is about the no, go away. Go away. Now. Go. Psst. Go. Scram. Yeah. Okay, so what I have here, this is the equivalent of 1 ounce of chocolate to about 10 ounces of water. We're going to stick it in there. And we're going to let it go. Get that going. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just taking an extra handkerchief that I have. I take my sugar and I'll put it inside there. And all I'm going to do is hit it with my tomahawk. And we're just going to break it up. Give it a couple whacks. And there we have our sugar. Okay. So we'll add that in as well. Always remember to put the rest, the extra back in, and you can use it later. Alright, so let's move on to our second bedroll. And this one is a lot larger because I use this one if I'm going to be out for multiple days. I'm also taking into consideration that with those multiple days I may hit bad weather, which is why I have a ground cloth, which is oilcloth, and should help keep it pretty dry. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this bedroll and we'll move on from there. Alright, basically what this is here's my oilcloth, and that's wrapped around my blanket. And on the inside of that is basically a snapsack. It's a little bit larger than some of the ones you may have seen. They do make them smaller. This one I chose to make larger, and they do. They make them larger. They make them however big that they want. It's also carried by a tump line. Okay, this one just happens to be leather. The nice thing about snapsack in this system is I can open up either end of either side to get at the items that I may need. So if I open up one side and that's not where my items are, I can turn it over and I can get at those items on the other side. So we'll just roll this out. There's our snapsack and we'll go from there. So what I've done actually is I've added a few things to this kit that aren't in the Scout kit, and we'll just go over those things. Bearing in mind that I'm always going to have a fire kit of some type. I'm always going to have some type of cordage, you know, our leather thongs and things of that nature. So I'll discuss that as we go along. But you know, additions to clothing. Instead of just having the shirt that I had before and the leg wraps, what I've done is I've actually thrown in an extra pair of moccasins. These are new. I just made these and I haven't had a chance to actually dye them yet. The other thing that I've included is a match coat. And a match coat can be used as a second layer, while you're sleeping, or you can use it while you're walking through the woods instead of breaking out your blanket to use. There's always going to be a tomahawk or some type of hand axe that's in the kit. My fire kit, is included in there, as well as some beeswax candles. What I've done here is I've added a sewing kit to do some repairs. I have a moccasin awl or sewing awl to help with those chores. More beeswax. Somewhere along the lines, I'm always going to have something to take care of my weapon. So here's my complete cleaning kit and whatnot for the flintlock. What I've done is I've actually added, not only do I have my corn boiler with my muscovado sugar, my chocolate, my tea, and my salt horn, but what I've done is I've actually added some more tea that we can use. I have a folding skillet, alright, as you can see, which doesn't take up much space. And I've thrown in a ration of cornmeal, so there's about a pound of cornmeal that's right here that I can use for making Johnny cakes and things like that. Underneath the Hudson Bay blanket that you see here is a ground cloth. And that ground cloth I'll show to you. That's the one that we made in the first season of Shadows in the Forest. Alright, so the ground cloth that we have essentially helps us in several ways. One, because it is an oilcloth, it's going to help us remain dry, right, on the damp ground. Now, we could do this in two ways. One, we can build up a layer of insulation underneath the ground cloth to keep us up off the ground. This acts as a second layer that's over the top of our blanket, okay? The thing about this is you have to remember that if you use the first method of getting into a blanket and it's designed like the sleeping bag, then you may want to turn this end, the end that's open, towards your fire so that you can tend your fire. This is sewn up at the bottom and it's sewn up on one side, and the design is that you would put the side that's closed towards the prevailing wind, and that's to close it off to help keep you warmer. Just remember that if you do that, the wind is in that direction, you're not going to be able to tend the fire. Then what you can do is you can pull this over the top of yourself, pull it over the top of your weapon, and you should be pretty much protected from the elements at that point without having a tarp over the top of your head. The other way that you can use this is if it's a nice night out and it's tolerable and it's, even in the summertime, whatever, is you can take this, the ground cloth itself, and you can fill that up with your leaves and your debris, and you can make it into a mattress. And then you can sleep over the top of it, just in your blanket. The second method that I want to show you as far as sleeping in your blanket is basically we're going to wrap up in the blanket and we're going to make a cocoon around ourselves. Again, remembering that we want to be able to cover our head to maintain as much heat as possible. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, the next method of sleeping in your blanket obviously doesn't lend the accessibility to tending a fire as easily, but it does actually cocoon you within several layers of your blanket. So what you do is you spread your blanket out and then you lay in it crosswise. You try to center yourself up, bearing in mind that you, up at your head, you need to have a cover that comes over the top. So we take our corner, put it underneath our feet, take one side, roll it over, tuck everything in, take this corner, unwrap it. And we have our hood, and we just wrap it. This way we have multiple layers of blanket that's on top of us. And if we, again, follow the basic rules of our insulation between the ground and our body, we should be fine. As you can see, the chocolate has melted down. Okay, it doesn't have the consistency of our modern hot chocolate, but we'll give this a little taste. So, you know, when you're dealing with 18th century recipes and things like that, when you start to look at the recipes in some of the books or written ledgers, sometimes it's not as easy as just reading 1 cup of this to 1 cup of that. So it's a little bit of experimentation to get it to where, you know, your food is like somewhat more palatable, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. You know, that was pretty good actually. I could have drank it the way that it was, but I actually wanted it a little bit more chocolatey. So if I had to think about it, it's to 10 ounces of water, it's going to be 1.5 ounces of chocolate to basically a handful, and there you go, just what I said, just a handful of sugar mixed in, and then it should be ready to go. Blankets can be used for several different garments. You know, one of the first garments that you could use is you can make a blanket shirt that's shown here. Cloaks were also employed. They were used a lot. There wasn't a lot of documentation on whether or not they had a hood. I have seen pictures of the cloaks and they did have hoods, so that's the way that I make mine, like the one that you're going to see here. Finally, one of the last things that you can do with a blanket, and it's very easy to make, is something that's known as a match coat. And you only need 3 things in the match coat. You basically need a blanket, you need a leather tug that's going to go around your waist, and you're going to need a blanket pin. But you don't even so much need a blanket pin, because there's other ways that you can create buttons to close off the top. And what we have here, this is my match coat. I'll show you how we use this. First thing that we're going to do is we get our tug out. We're going to unwrap this. We have a blanket pin. Now we're just going to unwrap this. And we're going to unfold this. Now what you're going to want to do is you pull this up over the top, and you're going to want to find your length first. Okay? I generally will take mine just above the knee. And that's where I'm going to wrap it. I take my tug, go all the way around. Tie it off tight in the front. Okay? That affords me freedom of movement that I can move around as I'm wearing it. Almost looks like a kilt. Well, there's a reason why the Scots had 9 yards of wool that they used in their kilts, because it was a shelter for them. It was their clothing. And it was their bedding. So it's something to bear in mind. If you were to actually take this and run it underneath your shoulder and up over the top and tie it off here, you would be wearing it much like a great kilt. This way you still have warmth around your midsection and your legs, but yet your top, you don't need to have as much heat, and it's there and you can change it around however you need be. Okay, one of the other things that we can do with this is we can create a hood very easily by taking this, putting it up over our head, coming down here, taking our blanket pin, which we have, and now we have a hood. This way we can still keep everything nice and warm. We can tuck our arms up underneath if we need to. If we need to get down completely, hunker up underneath the tree, cover up, we can do that as well. Once the storm is over, we can sit here, we can just get up and we can move. Maybe now if the sun's coming up and it's getting a little bit warmer, so what do? Well, we can just fold back over the top, we can go about our business and we can walk around. Or if we don't want to do that at all, if we take the hood and just drop the hood, tuck it in, now we can go about our business. Now we're on our way. So the match coat is very, very versatile in itself. Excuse me, because we can use it as that second layer. We can use it as an overcoat, or we could use it for sleeping as well to add that extra layer. This is, you know, for me, I'm 5'9", 205 pounds, and this happens to be 66 inches long by 60 inches wide. Okay, and it fits me fine. So if you have an old blanket, you can very easily make one. And again, all you need are three things. You need the blanket, you need a tug to go around your waist as a belt, and then you need a blanket pin, cloak pin, or however you're going to do that. One of the other things that you can do to actually create buttons is you can take one of your musket balls and you can put it inside the blanket and you can tie it off, or you could use a small pebble. So the Humble Blanket, a good piece of kit, many different options that you can use. You know, in the 18th century, they didn't have down-filled sleeping bags. They didn't have military sleep systems. I can tell you that you can employ a blanket for a lot of the season. You can use it, you know, in the early springtime, you know, right up into summer, and obviously into the early fall. When you start getting into really frigid temperatures, you know, don't trust your life to just a blanket, okay? It takes a lot of firewood to keep you warm through the night if you only have a wool blanket and, you know, a minor shelter at best. So always bear that in mind. You know, the blanket for them was fact. They had that, that's all they had, and that's what they ran with, you know, outside of animal skins and hides. We today have other options and better options to keep us warm in the winter time. So I do have two other tricks for you to add to the ones that you've seen, sleeping configurations and things like that. But you know, I've babbled on long enough in this video. So thanks for watching Shadows of the Forest. This is Brian from Snowwalker Bushcraft. Until the next one, walk the woods.